You hear them all the time, right? Capitalism, socialism, liberalism. They get thrown around on the news, people sling them like weapons in online debates. But what do these big isms actually mean? Well, that's what we're going to figure out. Honestly, it can feel like you need a political science degree just to keep up. These words are often used more as insults than as actual ideas, and their real meanings kind of get lost in all the noise. Today, we're going to cut right through that confusion. So here's the secret. The key to understanding all these isms isn't to memorize a bunch of random labels. It's to see them as different answers to some of the biggest questions we all face as a society. We're going to break it all down by looking at 4 of those fundamental questions. First up, and it's a big one, who controls the money? This is really the economic question. It's all about who owns stuff, who creates wealth, and who decides what everything is worth. So, one of the most common answers is capitalism. The core idea here is private ownership. You, me, any individual or company can own the things that make money. You know, the factories, the land, the shops, the whole system is driven by profit, and the main referee is the free market. Think of it this way. If you want to start a coffee shop, you just can. Your success or failure is pretty much up to your customers and your competition, not some government plan. Okay, now for a totally different answer. Socialism. Here, the focus shifts. The priority is equality and social justice. The goal is to make sure everyone has access to the essentials, no matter how much money they have. So the state usually steps in to run or at least regulate key areas like healthcare and education. A state-funded hospital that treats everyone, that is a perfect example of socialism in action. The goal isn't just pure profit, it's about the well-being of the whole community. And then we have the most radical answer to the money question, communism. The ultimate goal here is to create a society with no classes at all. No rich, no poor. And the way to do that is to get rid of private property entirely. Everything, the factories, the farms, you name it, is owned collectively by everyone. In this ideal world, a factory isn't owned by some CEO, it's owned and run by the workers themselves. And whatever they produce gets shared by all. Now, this is a super important distinction, so let's be clear. It's really a question of degree. You could say socialism tries to work within a system to shrink the gap between rich and poor. It often allows for private businesses to exist alongside public services. Communism, on the other hand, wants to completely replace that system. The goal is the total elimination of private property and social classes altogether. All right, we've talked about money. So what about our next big question? Who holds the power? This is all about who gets to make the rules and, run the country. A classic answer to this is republicanism. The main idea is simple. The people are in charge. There's no king or queen who inherits power for life. Instead, we, the citizens, choose our leaders through elections for a limited amount of time. And here's the kicker. If they do a bad job, we can vote them out. Power to the people, literally. Now, what if you think the best answer is that power should be held by almost no one? Well, that's the heart of libertarianism. This philosophy is all about maximum individual freedom. The government's job is shrunk down to the bare minimum, basically just protecting people from violence and theft. A libertarian would argue for as few laws and taxes as possible so that every person is free to live their life and chase their dreams with almost no interference. Here's one you might not hear about as often, but it's a fascinating idea. Syndicalism. From this point of view, power shouldn't be with politicians or CEOs. It should be with the workers themselves, organized into powerful groups called unions or syndicates. The basic idea is that the people who actually do the work should be the ones calling the shots, not just on the factory floor, but for all of society. Okay, so we've covered money and power. What about question number 3? How should we live together? This one's all about our values as a society, the principles that guide us. Liberalism puts the individual front and center. Its highest values are personal liberty and individual rights. We're talking freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the belief that every single person should be treated equally under the law. A core liberal idea is defending someone's right to say something you think is totally wrong, because protecting the freedom itself is what matters most. On the flip side, you have conservatism, which often looks to the past for wisdom. It puts a lot of emphasis on preserving traditions, institutions, and values that have, stood the test of time. It's not that conservatives are always against change, but they tend to think it should be slow, careful, and respectful of what came before. They often see things like family, religion, and the rule of law as the essential anchors that keep a society stable. And this right here really gets to the heart of so many of our modern debates. You've got liberalism, which champions the individual and is often eager for progress, even if that means breaking from the past. And then you have conservatism, which champions the community and its traditions, arguing that stability is more important than rapid, untested change. So much of politics is just a tug of war between these two big ideas. Now, feminism offers a very clear answer to how we should live together. It should be with complete equality between men and women. It's a movement all about spotting and getting rid of every form of discrimination against women, whether that's in politics, at work, or just in everyday life. The demand for equal pay for equal work, that's a classic, straightforward example of this fight for basic fairness. And that brings us to our final, and maybe our most challenging question. Where do we belong? This one's all about identity, what makes a group an us, and what makes another group a them. History has shown us that the answers to this question can lead down some incredibly dark roads. And one of the most horrific answers ever conceived was Nazism. It was an ideology built on extreme nationalism and racism. It argued that belonging was based purely on blood, on a mythical Aryan racial purity. And this belief in racial superiority was then used to justify horrific violence against anyone considered an outsider. When you break it down, the core ideas are just chillingly clear. It was all about a belief in racial supremacy. It was a centralized one-party dictatorship that crushed any dissent, and it was defined by its persecution and violence against minorities, most of all the Jewish people. The consequences of this ideology were just catastrophic, leading directly to World War II and some of the worst atrocities in human history. Now, a very different and usually far less violent answer to this question of belonging is separatism. This is the idea that a group's identity, whether it's based on culture, ethnicity, or language, is so unique that they feel they can no longer be part of a larger country. So they try to break away and form their own independent nation where they can govern themselves based on their own shared identity. So from who controls the money to where we all belong, it's pretty clear these isms aren't just words in a textbook. They are the actual frameworks that people use to answer life's biggest questions. And they are at work all around us, every single day. These ideas have incredible power. They build nations, they start wars, they write our laws, and they really do shape our lives. So now that you have the basic blueprint, the real question is for you. When you look at the world around you, which of these ideas do you see in action? And maybe more importantly, which answers do you think are the right ones?